All right, welcome everyone. In this video, I want to continue our work with matrices in R. We've talked about what a matrix is and how different ways that we can define them in R. And so now I want to build some arithmetic with these matrices. What does it mean to add two matrices or to multiply two matrices? So we know how to work with numbers. And so numbers are also called scalars. So these are just individual values as opposed to multiple values that are being stored in a matrix or a vector. So when I say the word scalar, that just means a number. So I know how to do arithmetic with scalars. I know how to add like 5 and 7, for example. That gives me 12. Great. The question is, and I also know how to multiply those two values. What I want to talk about in this video is if I have a matrix A, and I have another matrix B, what does it mean to add those two matrices together or subtract those two matrices? What does it mean to take the product of those two matrices? Can I take the product of two matrices? Can I take a scalar like 5 and multiply it by a matrix like A? So I want to talk about these different operations that we can do with matrices in the next couple of videos. Let's first consider the operation of addition if I want to add two matrices together. So the first really important thing to note is that we can only add matrices together if they have the same size, if they have the same number of rows and the same number of columns. So with scalars, we can add any two scalars together. We cannot add any two matrices together. This operation only makes sense. This is only defined if our matrices that we're trying to add have the same size. So let's consider these two matrices, A and B. So I'm going to define A and B by running these two code cells below. And I typed them out on the screen as well. So A and B, these are both 2 by 3 matrices. So A is the matrix whose first row is 1, 2, 3. Second row is 4, 5, 6. B has a first row of 2, 9, 1 and a second row of 1, 3, 1. And you can see the code that we use to create each of those matrices. So hopefully you're getting comfortable with using this matrix function with or without the by row equals true option. So this one, arrange them by rows. So that's why it went 1, 2, 3 across the first row first. Matrix B, we did not use the by row equals true argument. So by default, it arranges them by columns. So it took 2, 1, put that in the first column, 9, 3 was the second column, and so on. So now I've got these two matrices. They have the same size, so I can add them. And addition, we define by adding the elements component-wise. So if I want to calculate this matrix A plus B down below, it's going to have the same size as matrix A and matrix B. The first column, the first entry I get by adding the entries in row 1, column 1. So I would take 1 plus 2, and that gives me 3. Then I would take the 2 plus the 9, and that gives me 11. Then I would take the 3 plus the 1, and that gives me 4 over here. And I do this for each position in the matrix. I would take 4 plus 1, and that gives me 5. I would take 5 plus 3, and that gives me 8. And then lastly, 6 plus 1 gives me 7. So when I add A and B, I should get this matrix 3, 11, 4 in row 1, 5, 8, 7 in row 2. So not too difficult to add those two matrices. And the way that we do it in R is we use the plus operator, just like we would add two numbers. So it's no different than how we would add two numbers together. So I'll run this code cell. I'm going to clean up this over here a little bit. Okay, so then we can run this code cell and check our work. So adding those two matrices indeed gives me 3, 11, 4 in the first row, 587 in the second row. And again, that calculation just came from doing this term by term. So we just add values that sit in the same positions. And we do subtraction exactly the same way, except instead of adding them, we subtract them. So if I were to do A minus B, then the very first thing I do is say for this very first entry in row one, column one, I take entry in row one, column one of A, subtract 2. That gives me the -1. Then I say 2 minus 9, that gives me the -7. And then 3 minus 1, that gives me the 2. 4 minus 1 gives me the 3. 5 minus 3 gives me the 2. And then 6 minus 1 gives me this value 5 over here. So addition of two matrices is not too difficult to do by hand. Also not too complicated to do in R. We just use the same old addition operator, and the same with subtraction. So we subtract two matrices just using the same minus operator that we would for numbers. What happens if we try and add matrices that have different dimensions? So I'm going to define a matrix C over here. It's not that important what the values in C are necessarily, but C has a different size than matrix A. So C is a 3 by 4 matrix. A is a 2 by 3 matrix. So they don't have the same number of rows and columns. So when I try and add them, we're going to get an issue because matrix A doesn't have a column 4. So what do I add to 10 over here if there's nothing in column 4 of matrix A? So this operation is not even defined. So if I try and add matrix A and matrix C, and those matrices have different dimensions, then the output is undefined. It's like dividing by 0. We cannot perform that operation. R cannot perform that operation, and it's giving us an error that's saying that essentially these two matrices don't have the same size, so I'm not able to add them together. So just keep that in mind. We can add any two numbers that we want to. We're not able to add any two matrices. We can only add and subtract matrices if they have the same size. And when they do, then we just add them element-wise, or we subtract them element-wise. Okay, in the next video, we will talk about multiplication.